Hey Farah, so let's look at your animation. This video only gives me 15 minutes, so I'll have to go relatively fast to try to get it all in here. So overall, this is looking pretty good. I feel like the character could have a little bit more shifting of the weight side to side here. It feels like it's mainly rotation, so just moving the character a little bit side to side over the foot, I think would help. I know you're going for that like broken robot feel. Again, I feel like it's because there's so many animations out there. It's going to be a little hard to make that clear that that's in its intentionally broken, not just a broken animation. But having said that, this is you're doing a relatively good job at pulling that off. I think it's going to need a little bit of something else to make it evident, including like some sort of effects. So we can work on that if you want to, but I think the easier way is maybe to not have quite that much of a hitching in it, or maybe just take it out entirely, just so it's clear. It's you just don't want to be mistaken that it's that there's something wrong with the animation. So let me look through it here and see some of your poses. It's actually looking pretty good otherwise. So hold on a second. That's sorry. That was GoDaddy, or they had called earlier. It's looking pretty good otherwise. So I would probably I don't have a ton of other feedback on that. So let's look at the run. So the run kind of has a slightly different feel to it. Again, I think that we need a little bit more side to side on the run, but just a little bit, not a ton. And I like that the arms are dangling behind him. I'm getting a little bit of jitteriness in that. Because how I read that is that the character is running so fast that his arms are kind of trailing behind them, like I feel like I see that in anime a lot, or something like that. So the problem with that is the arms are sort of jittering, and I feel like maybe you'd want a little bit more. Like if this is the arm kind of hanging back behind him, a little bit more of this like wave action, like you're kind of getting this like this flippiness of like like it's like a ribbon sort of dangling in the wind, if that makes sense. As you're pulling it across through, so you just get a little bit more of this like flappy flow to them as they would go by. And right now they're feeling a little stiff and not really getting a lot of that reaction from them. They're feeling stiff in that they're like no major movement, and they're feeling jittery because there's a whole lot of minor movement. So that minor movement may be coming from both. You got something popping up and down here on this control, and then you have the normal up and downs from the blue control. So I believe that it's probably a combination of those two things that are causing the jitteriness to kind of travel down the arm. What is this? This is, I guess, crouch. So I'm noticing something on a couple of your other idols too. Okay. So if you see how your foot travels backwards here, it travels and it starts to slow down right there. Like it comes to a stop almost in the character's right foot, and then it starts again slowly. And so that means that probably what you have is on one end of your curve, at the end of your curve, for the forward and backward on that foot, it's coming in and kind of settling to a stop here, right? And at the beginning of it, it's doing the opposite of that. It's kind of doing this, right? And so that means it's kind of flattening out there. And what you're needing instead, if we could imagine that this curve keeps traveling, is you're needing it to seem like it just travels straight on through to the end, and you're needing this to feel like it was traveling in that same direction as it started. So it's kind of imagining how those two would line up so you don't get that flattening out. Now if you have each of your files in their own if you have each of the animations in their own file, then you can actually do some cycling on that and be able to see how to adjust those tangents. And so if you do, let me know and I can help you set the file up for that. But otherwise, I think that we're getting a little bit of that flattening of the tangents there. And I'm seeing that in all of your other walks as well. This one, again, the character's still got some hitching all over it, and I don't know. I mean, I know your reasoning for it. I just don't know if I think it's actually successful or working out. I think that also this one needs a little bit more side-to-side movement here on the steps. You also have, if this is your crouch walk, you also have it traveling probably about the same speed as your regular walk, which is, I guess that's fine. We will actually be changing the controller so you'll be able to see it change. So that's not too big of a deal functionality-wise, but just kind of wanted to address that this is still going to be going the same speed. So that's just something to be aware of, that maybe you would want the crouch to be a little slower, just so the character slows down when you go into crouch. But that's kind of an option. The other point of crouch is so you can get underneath low stuff, so at that point maybe you don't want it going any slower. I think you probably know my note about the twitch on this. Again, it's still reading as an error in animation, not necessarily an error in the robot. And so like that's something that I would have a hard time figuring out too. I mean, it's a good effort in trying to make it happen. I just don't know if it's being particularly as successful as you're wanting. So I'd consider maybe pulling some of that out of there. So let's kind of look at how your character moves off the ground. I don't have the Maya file, but I feel like the hips do a pretty good job at sort of popping straight up. But I guess it's maybe the base control that you're moving. Yeah, don't sweat it too much, because I actually think that one of the things we're going to be changing is how that goes up. But I think that this is drifting up. So if you're doing this for rendering, I think you'll have to make that sort of pop up a little faster. I also don't really feel like I would start this off with a single anticipation pose where the character is really squashed down, and then your second pose is the character pushing off the ground where their legs straighten out. So you would get on pose 1, let's kind of draw this simply from the side. Pose 1, your character is kind of squashed down on the ground, ready to jump. Pose 2, the character is really stretched out, pushing off the ground, like this. And so those two, that popping from that pose to that pose really gives us that force on the ground. And then if we go look at how the pose ends, it's not bad. Now the other thing I would say is the feet are sort of still staying in, like with the toes pointing perfectly forward. And so I think just offsetting that a little bit is going to keep it feeling a little bit less rigid. So like the toes are just completely flat facing the camera. So like if we were looking at it from the top view, the toes just feel like they're just straight across from each other, just so they're completely flat. So like just angling them a little bit, and getting a little bit more interest in the posing there. The other thing is they're completely flat along the bottom, as if the character's still standing on the ground. So you probably, if you're looking at the character's foot from the side, maybe a little bit more of like, angling like the bottom of the foot a little bit more like this, so you get that feeling that the gravity's kind of playing some part on that. So this is your idle. I think the idle is one of the ones that is most convincing that the character is broke. That you're working with a faulty character. So again, with this sort of default pose, the toes are sort of perfectly across. That's just a little stiff feeling. So maybe just angling them out a little bit on one side or the other would really kind of help loosen that up. Again, like I don't know how much effort you're willing to put into trying to make this seem like the character is broken, and if that's really something you're wanting to get across, I think that you're going to have to do some sort of trigger on the character to make a spark or something like that. So I think this is, look at the folder. This is damage. I'm not really feeling the force change there. Like it feels like the character is kind of, well, some of it is that the character's in its default pose, and that's not it's not very it's not extremely oh crap, what's the word I'm trying to say? Like it doesn't make for the best posing for this attack. But let's imagine that this is the character in the neutral pose. I'm just going to kind of draw the can. So we want the character to really pop backwards, and so after he gets hit, then maybe he feels like he's got like a little bit of that like force that sort of punched in on that way to knock him backwards. One of the things you can do to really add to that is a single frame before the character goes backwards. Just kind of do the reverse, kind of anticipate the character a little bit forward. And just a little bit for one single frame. And sometimes that'll help give a little bit more pop to it. The other thing I would say is it feels a little like it just blends back into the two poses. Like he just kind of hits that pose and then just kind of blends back to his neutral. And so that feels like it needs a little bit more thought into how he gets back and forth between the two. This is your sneak walk. Not bad. I feel like one of the legs needs to be a little, like I can kind of tell that it feels like the whole character is just kind of rotating. And so it feels like nothing's leading or following the other. So like this front leg feels like it needs to kind of go forward first before the hips rotate forward. And then the arms like rotate after that. And so I'm not really getting that. It kind of feels like they're just all rotating together. So like right here, maybe you would have this leg reaching forward a little earlier or a little further, and this leg pushing back, and then this arm kind of dragging behind a little bit. So I think it really needs to offset when those key poses happen. And then your idle for it. Seems pretty good. The only thing I really notice is the feet are kind of swimming around. So once you see that happening, it's going to seem like the feet aren't planted. It's going to feel like they're just kind of drifting on the ground. So you may want to just lock those in place to make it feel like it's the character's kind of stuck to the ground. So otherwise, I think this is looking pretty good. I'll send you an email with sort of a proxy grades, and just let me know if you have any questions. Thanks.